Hi, welcome back, and now it's time for another theory lesson. It's actually been a while. Today, what we're going to be talking about are different scale degrees, chords built on different notes of the scale. Specifically, we're going to be looking at the C major scale. Later on, we'll look at different scales, and I'll basically show you where all this stuff kind of fits in. So anyway, here comes the lesson. Time for another theory lesson. So here with theory lesson 3, if you remember with lessons 2 and 1, I talked about some very basic theory concepts, mostly scales and chords, I believe. And this is kind of putting them together, kind of putting things in perspective. Some of the stuff I may have already mentioned in passing, but this is kind of just to elaborate on what we're talking about, because this will become very important later on when we start composing or looking at music to see what's going on, as well as just future theory lessons so you understand what's happening. So we have this thing in front of us. Let's take a look at this. This should look somewhat familiar and somewhat foreign at the same time. In terms of notes, here we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. You know that as the C major scale. Of course, this is going to be a little different with every major, every scale is going to be a little bit different, and I'll explain that. But keep in mind that when we have the C major scale, that we have 0 sharps and 0 flats. So we're not going to be using any of the black keys at all. So here we have, so just looking at the C major scale, I'm going to discuss scale degrees, which is what the title says. So very simple, very, very simple, is that when you have C, or you have a scale rather, and your first note, you have your first note, that is called the first scale degree. The next note is called the second scale degree, third scale degree, fourth scale degree, fifth scale degree, sixth scale degree, seventh scale degree, and then back to actually the first scale degree. We also call that an octave, playing between those two of the same note. So you may be asking yourself, well, what about all these Roman numerals? If you notice that the Roman numerals kind of go along with what I said, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1 again. So you may be asking yourself, well, why are some of them lowercase and some of them are uppercase? Well, I will explain that in a minute with the next screen we have, and that is chords built on scale degrees. So all these chords are just white note chords because we don't have any sharps or flats in the key of C. We'll talk about other key signatures later on, but right now let's just talk about the key of C. So we have this first chord built on the first scale degree. We have the second chord built on the second scale degree. Third built on the third. Next scale degree, next scale degree, next scale degree, next scale degree, the seventh, and then we're back to 1. So very simple. You might just want to practice going through that, like so. So let's take a look here. We have our first chord. Do you remember, well, I guess I can't ask you, but hopefully you remember the major chord and what makes up a major chord. Remember that almost every chord, unless it's a 7th chord, but for right now, almost every chord has a first, a third, which is that middle note, and a fifth, which is the last note. And remember that a major chord has 4 half steps between the first and the third, and 7 half steps between the first and the fifth. If you use that formula, you can make a major chord on any note you want. Like say you had A flat. Using that formula, you can make an A flat chord. And once you get good at it, you can make them very quickly. So anyway, that first chord's major. Whenever we have a major chord, we're going to be using an uppercase Roman numeral letter. And I don't know why they decided to use Roman numerals as opposed to numbers. I guess because there's not a lowercase, number, Roman numeral number 1, or regular number 1. Anyways, so we have capital 1, or Roman numeral 1, for major chord. The next chord, let's count this one. It should sound kind of sad to you. And remember that major's kind of happy, minor's kind of sad. Remember that with minor, there's still 7 half steps between the first and the fifth, but there are only 3 half steps between the first and the third. So 1, 2, 3. So there we go. So we have a minor chord here. Whenever we have a minor chord, we're going to be using a lowercase Roman numeral. The next on the third scale degree we have here, if you notice, it's a lowercase 3, Roman numeral 3 rather. So we know that that's a minor chord right away. We don't even really have to count it out unless you want to double check. 1, 2, 3, yep. The next one, scale degree 4, that's a major chord. We got an uppercase 4 there. 5, uppercase 5, so another major chord. 6 is going to be minor. You can count that out if you don't trust me, and or if you want more practice. And then we have the 7th. 7th looks weird. It's lowercase, but it has this weird little circle next to it. That is what's called the diminished symbol. So with diminished chords, we have the lowercase plus an extra little like O or circle or 0 in this case, I think I wrote. So let's count this one out. We have a diminished chord. Remember that a diminished chord has only 3 half steps between the first and the third, and only 6 half steps between the first and the fifth. So we have the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's our fifth, like so. So that's a diminished chord. Remember that when we have a major chord, to get to diminished, we have to lower the third by 1 half step and the fifth by 1 half step. And that gives us that diminished chord. And then we have the C major chord again, which is a R1 chord again. Of course, it's going to be a capital 1 because that's a major chord. And now I want you to keep this in mind that these this pattern of major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major holds true to every major scale you play. No matter what note you're starting on, the first scale degree will always be major, and then 2 and 3 will be minor, 4 and 5 will be major, 6 will be minor, 7 will be diminished, and C will be major. So just keep in mind that that holds consistent no matter what scale you're talking about. So take a look at these. I'll post these up on the wiki to practice. Become familiar with them because it is really important later on when we start really diving into chord progressions and things like that. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the lesson, and I think I'm losing my voice. I need a glass of water. So anyway, I'll see you for the outro. All right, that ends theory lesson 3. Today we talked about building different chords on different notes of the scale, and I showed you that there's kind of a pattern to how that works. So take a look at that. I will post those the things we worked on to the wiki for more additional practice. So if you have any questions about what we've done, whether it's this lesson or another lesson, feel free to ask. Hopefully I can get to you. And anyway, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching my videos as always, and so long.